But another, entirely different approach to flight was pursued in the late 18th century. French brothers Joseph and Etienne Montgolfier observed that the heat of a fire propels charred paper upwards. Using a brazier to provide the heated air, they successfully launched a paper-lined linen balloon at the end of April 1783. It flew to a height of 1,000 feet and landed 3/4 of a mile away. Seven months later, on the 21st of November 1783, the first Montgolfier balloon capable of carrying passengers took off from the grounds of a royal castle in Paris. In the basket below was Pilâtre de Rosier, who was accompanied by the Marquis d'Alande. As the balloon rose into the air, d'Alande recalled,
"I was surprised at the silence and the absence of movement which our departure caused among the spectators, and believed them to be astonished and perhaps awed at the strange spectacle. They might well have reassured themselves. I was still gazing when Monsieur Rosier cried to me, 'You are doing nothing, and the balloon is scarcely rising a fathom.' 'Pardon me,' I answered, as I placed a bundle of straw upon the fire and slightly stirred it."
The first men to fly were airborne for 25 minutes. They landed 5 miles from their takeoff point, having experienced sensations that were at that time unique.
The propeller probably is the biggest single thing that the Wright brothers gave us, and the thing that they've gotten the least credit for. The Wrights determined for the very first time that a propeller was a wing in rotation.
This was invention touched with genius. Everyone else at the time was thinking of propellers as rotary paddles, like the screws on a ship. A revolving wing, on the other hand, would need to be lift. But since the outside of a spinning blade travels faster than the inside, they had to gradually shift the angle of attack along the blade's length to maximize efficiency. They quickly figured out what the correct twist should be, and in so doing, invented the modern propeller.
Today's wooden propeller is 84 to 85% efficiency. We tested a Wright propeller, and it ends up being 81% efficient. And that is just mind-boggling that they could be so close where we are today for the very first propeller.
The Wright brothers took nothing for granted.
It went by like we were standing still. Blue leader to group. Get off the air. Going by at 2 o'clock. What the hell is it?
It was the Messerschmitt 262, the world's first operational jet fighter. It flies 150 miles an hour faster than our fastest fighters.
Pilotbedarf bestanden. Und hier jetzt. Aus Japan in die Geschichte eingegangen und
Keine Ahnung, was das ist. Ja.
The engine can be split up into 4 main areas: compressor, combustor, the turbine, and the exhaust. The compressor has 2 jobs. It sucks and squeezes, drawing air in from outside, and also compressing the air. Some of the air is forced into the combustion chamber at very high pressures, so that when fuel is mixed with it and ignited, a rapid increase in heat energy is produced. The combustion chamber is where the bang happens. The burning mixture of air and fuel is sent rushing at high speed into the turbine. As this gas expands, part of the energy is used to power the turbines, which in turn drive the compressor. Finally, the gas is blown out through the exhaust nozzle. It has lost some of its energy through the turbine, but has enough left over to accelerate through the nozzle, providing a fast-moving propelling jet stream out of the back of the engine, and therefore, by reaction, creating an equal and opposite forward thrust. This is the whole point of the operation, taking air in at normal speed and forcing it out at a higher speed, backwards, thus sending the engine forwards. It may sound absurd, but it really is very simple. And it works. It is important to remember that these individual stages form a complete and continuous working cycle, a constant generation of power. here are both the advantages and disadvantages of the way in which a jet engine works. On the one hand, the jet engine has relatively few moving parts, and as it's a very effective method of producing power, it can be small and light for a given output. On the other hand, the components at the hot end of the engine have to be able to withstand tremendous and continuous operating pressures and temperatures. All the sections of the engine are designed to make the flow of air through the engine as efficient as possible. The compressor does this by having both rotating and stationary blades, or rotor and stator blades. The rotor blades take the air and force it backwards through the engine, while the stator blades channel the air so that it hits the next series of rotor blades at the right angle. As the air is pushed through the compressor, the space available for it is reduced, and it gets literally packed in, so much so that compression ratios of up to 40:1 are possible. The compressor is driven by the turbine. One turbine can drive the whole compressor, but now there are often 2 or 3 turbines in an engine, each with a separate shaft that rotates a different section of the compressor. The fact that the sections can then rotate at different speeds means it is easier to maintain the correct overall flow of air through the engine, and the entire engine can be made shorter and stiffer. When the air reaches the combustion chamber, it's at a pressure approaching 600 psi, and it's travelling at more than half the speed of sound. Fuel is difficult to burn under these conditions, so a combustion chamber provides the correct environment, an area of more slowly moving and swirling air that is sprayed with fuel. This mixture will ignite, and the increase in heat energy is quite considerable. The burning gas can be as hot as 2,100 degrees centigrade, and at this sort of temperature, the metal the turbine blades are made of will melt. However, cooler air continues to be mixed with the burning gas to lower its temperature before entry into the turbine. And more cool air that had not been taken through the combustion chamber but diverted for cooling purposes brings the operating temperature of the turbine blade down to a more manageable 1,000 degrees or so. In some ways, the turbine is the compressor in reverse. Nozzle guide vanes channel the gas onto the turbine blades, which are shaped so that the gas flowing over them is used to generate the optimum power. The blades are slotted onto a disc which rotates the shaft that is connected forwards to the compressor. Often, as well as driving the compressor, the turbine will also provide ancillary power to even drive a propeller. It is vital that turbines are perfectly designed and manufactured. Just this one stage, the high-pressure turbine can generate up to 70,000 horsepower, at which point the blades will be spinning at 1,500 feet per second. That's over 1,000 miles per hour. So everything must be done to ensure that the passage of gas through the turbines is as smooth as possible. Similar care is taken as the gas leaves the engine through the propelling nozzle. It is these exhaust gases that provide the thrust to power the engine, so essential that they are propelled from the engine at exactly the right speed required by the aircraft. This is largely determined by the size and shape of the propelling nozzle that can give a kick to the gases as they leave the engine. The completed engine is, of course, a rather more complex affair, once the noise suppression, pollution reduction, cooling, lubrication, electrical, fuel and other systems have all been added. But the 4 sections of the working cycle remain unaltered. Soon after the invention of the jet engine, it was decided that brute force alone wasn't enough, and designers started to look for ways to develop this newfound source of power. The type of engine that we've been looking at is called the turbojet. It was the first kind of jet to be made, and it remains the best for high-speed flight, as it's very powerful but small and has a low frontal area, so it can be easily streamlined. The turbojet can be made even more powerful by adding reheat. In this system, fuel is sprayed into the exhaust and lit, so there is a second combustion stage which provides extra thrust. Reheat is generally used only for short periods to give extra acceleration, such as on takeoff or maximum climb. On landing, however, deceleration is wanted, and then thrust reversers are used. These are flaps that move to divert the gas forwards rather than backwards through the exhaust. This has the effect of slowing the aircraft down, as the jet reaction tries to propel the engine in the opposite direction to the airflow. A development of the turbojet is the turboprop. This has an extra turbine which, through a gearbox, drives a propeller. Aircraft powered by a turboprop are not as fast as those powered by a turbojet, but nevertheless, the turboprop remains a very efficient and economical engine. If the propeller is removed from a turboprop, then the resulting engine is called a turboshaft. The shaft is coupled to a gearbox, and through this it can drive a helicopter rotor. Much of the latest development, however, has been done on the turbofan. Here, only some of the air is fed through all the compressors, the combustor and the turbines. The rest is partially compressed and is bypassed around the hot core of the engine. This cuts down the engine noise as it reduces the overall speed of the exhaust jet stream. It also makes the engine very economical, since it's aerodynamically more efficient to have a lot of air moving relatively slowly rather than a little air moving relatively quickly. At very high speeds, to provide the thrust needed, it is necessary to have a small amount of air moving more rapidly. This is why the turbojet is used for supersonic and high bypass ratio turbofan for subsonic aircraft.
Of the many unique hazards that exist near an aircraft, perhaps there is none more dangerous than that of a jet engine. The danger exists on both ends. It sucks up what's in its path and blows away anything behind it. If it's powerful enough to throw a 435-ton airplane into the sky, imagine what it could do to you or anything else near it. Some don't realize its power. Many don't think it can hurt them. This stage demonstration will show you what it can do, and a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Have you ever sat in the seat of a jumbo jet and wondered how it's able to fly through the air while loaded with passengers, cargo, and fuel? Let's take a closer look at how a wing is able to lift airplanes both large and small off the ground. As an aircraft's wing slices through the air, it pushes air over its top and under its bottom surface. A wing's curved shape is designed to cause air to move at a higher speed over its top surface compared to its bottom surface. A principle in physics states that faster-moving air has lower pressure than slower-moving air, meaning that there's more pressure on the bottom of the wing than on the top of the wing. The higher pressure air pushes up on the bottom of the wing, and the result is lift. The angle of the wing relative to the air that it slices through, called the angle of attack, also contributes to the wing's lift. A wing at a higher angle of attack generates more lift than a wing at a lower angle of attack. When an aircraft begins takeoff, its wing produces no lift because there's no air flowing over it. However, as the aircraft's speed increases, the wing generates more lift, and when the pilot increases the aircraft's angle of attack, the plane lifts off. The next time you're flying in the sky, you'll appreciate how an airplane's wing is lifting you to your next destination. Happy flying. For more information on this topic and many others, please visit www.wydea.com.
Possibly the most famous of World War I, due not to its performance, but the fact that it was the aircraft made famous by Baron Manfred von Richthofen and his flying circus, Jasta 11. Once again, it was the turn of Fokker to produce an air triplane. The legend which has grown around the Fokker triplane owes a great deal to its use by Manfred von Richthofen, and in fact his death whilst flying number 425/17, climbed like a monkey and manoeuvred like the devil. Most pilots in Richthofen's Jagdgeschwader flew the aircraft until April 1918. During the first big air battle over Le Cateau on March the 18th, 1918, 52/17, the aircraft flown by Manfred von Richthofen. Contrary to all the sensational claims by the Allies, von Richthofen's triplanes were perfectly standard aircraft and carried no more than... Every weekend, one aircraft in particular draws the crowds to the old Rheinbeck Aerodrome in New York. Their original Fokker DR-1 triplane, which has been restored to its original condition and still flies today in the colours of Manfred von. With the shortage of powerful engine plants at the time, bearing in mind that the Mercedes 160 horsepower water-cooled engines had all been taken by the Albatros factory,
Calm down. Getting excited isn't going to make this go any faster. Just relax. Try to be a little bit more like Phil.
Hey, what do we got here? Poetry.
Hey,
oh.
Jack,
We have a poet on board.
May I have a book back, please?
Why don't you read us a poem, Danny?
Yeah, read us
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, I want
no.
to hear some poetry.
Poetry.
Nothing's finished.
I know you wrote, Danny. Read us something.
No.
Yeah, Danny.
Yeah, I want to hear some poetry. Come on.
Come on,
Danny. Don't be
Read
shy.
us something you started.
Yeah. We got a regular old Shakespeare on board, fellas. Curly words. You got a good tone, Jack. Tone deaf. I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere among the clouds above.
Oh, Lord.
Those that I fight, I do not hate. Those that I guard, I do not love. Nor law, nor duty bade me fight. Nor public men, nor cheering crowds. A lonely impulse of delight drove to this tumult in the clouds. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed waste of breath. A waste of breath the years behind. In balance with this life, this death.
Hi, my name is Warren Blythe, and I work for Natural Point, where we develop optical motion tracking devices for a variety of uses. Here, I'm going to give you a run-through of what our TrackIR game controller brings to the table, and what it means to put your head in the game. The TrackIR sensors you can flip through your reflectors onto a hat back. We have patented math that takes these 3 points and captures true 3D motion. And what that means is that I can lean left and right, and up and down, and in and out, while I'm rotating with yaw and pitch and roll. So all the ways I can move in 3D space. That's what 6 degrees of freedom means. As you can see, so I can see completely behind myself without having to look away from my monitor. And I can adjust this for any of the movements that I'm doing. And this is key. This is called motion scaling. So the point of it is that I don't have to get up out of my chair and do giant crazy motions and get all athletic for the sentences that I already perform when I'm playing a game or looking around my monitor. This is what makes it so intuitive, is that I don't have to think about what key presses to use or how to use my hands to control my eyes. I can just use my head movement to control my eyes. So we have special support built into over 70 titles so far, and this is Microsoft's Flight Simulator. It's kind of been our killer app for the last few years. It's easy for me to keep my eyes on different things in the cockpit, and my hands are running the controls, but I can zoom in and or I can lean up and over my dash and get a better sense of the orientation of my plane, which helps a lot when I'm coming in for a landing. Also, if I'm flying along and a strut is in the way and I want to see what's behind it, I don't have to slowly. In racing titles like Image Space Incorporated's R Factor, I can look into turns. So as I'm moving around corners, I have a much better sense of how well I'm following the optimal racing line. Plus, as opponents try to sneak past me, I can look over and see how the mirrors are actually rendering in a 3D view based on where my head is at. So again, it's much more immersive. So these are examples of the things that racing and flight simulators have enjoyed for years now. What's new in 2007 is this. So when I use tracker with armed assault, I can look away from where my gun is pointed. So I can keep my gun and my body trained on an objective and look around to see if anyone is sneaking up on me. Just showing how my virtual hands are holding my gun. That's pretty cool. In multiplayer, this is what you'll see. Anyone will be able to see where a tracker user is heavily used in its tactical teamwork. These are all just examples of how tracker is evolving the way we control games. We're not trying to replace the joystick. We know the world loves them, and we love them too. We're just trying to add something new on top of them that brings your head into play. And we're sure to see new cool things as the word spreads, so please spread the word. I should also mention Natural Point is going to have a booth at the Game Developer Conference again this year, where you can check out Tracker, and you can also see OptiTrack. It's going to cost less than $5,000, and should hopefully disrupt the motion capture market a bit. But we're going to have a separate private meeting room just to meet with game developers and press and joystick and headset manufacturers. In there, we're going to be talking about other genres we're getting into, like football and role-playing and music-based rhythm game. That's kind of our answer to the Wii controller. So if you want to see what's coming soon, please contact us today